Hi, my name's Alistair Somerville of Acuity Design, and this is a talk about some of the work I've been doing on the Design for Planet Systemic Design Framework for the Design Council in the United Kingdom. Now, what I've been tasked with is designing and testing workshop design and facilitation material based upon the work they've previously done on systemic design and thinking. Now, this slide shows the quite large number of elements which are moving around in the framework. So there's the principles, the roles, design activities, and the enabling activities, all of which have multiple elements below them. All of which is a way of trying to organize the space between people and planet for design during the climate crisis. So trying to find some way of order and present design moving between the individual, the people, and the planet. So between the small and the vast. So going through the roles that a human might have, the design activities a person might share with others, and the activities in a framework. The way in which I've gone about this is by running test workshops to see how things are discovered, what the meanings are, what people feel about things. I've done it in two places. First of all, I've done it in the format of a pop-up event in Stroud, which is a town in England which has a very strong activist and environmentalist background. And so I needed to understand how people from that sense of being felt about the material. And also in Bristol, where I did a much more formal workshop with professional designers working in the UX and service design industry to be able to see how the material felt for what is in general the target audience. What this talk is about is some of the ideas which came up. First of all, words and the meaning of words and how people find the words helpful or unhelpful. In general, I found with activists, environmentalists, the use of the word systemic to be unhelpful, to be a barrier to meaning and a barrier to wanting to use any of the framework or any of the toolkit, because what was heard was mostly the first part, the system, the idea that this was about a process, about placing people inside something which was industrial or digital in that sense. So there was a trust issue of the use of the word systemic amongst activists. On the other side of it, there is certainly within the Beyond Net Zero report, which you can download and read from the Design Council, which is about 60 pages long. Within that, there is, of course, for all people, and this came up in Bristol, a mystery about what some of the words actually mean within both the context of the report and the context of people's lives. So all of these words, the systemic, the holistic, the sustainable, the circular, the regenerative, all of them have specific meaning as far as the report and people who work very directly in climate crisis work. And yet what they mean to people who are just approaching the issues or just approaching the framework is much harder. And that's more a sense of how does one gain clarity in doing the work if one is unclear about the meaning of words, and who chooses the meaning of those words. On the other side, there is actions and what actions the framework is trying to enable. In Stroud, again, from a more activist sense of climate crisis and things to be done, there is a certain coldness about the design framework and the tools being offered, in a sense that they do come from a more rigid sense of how one should approach design work, how one should approach doing things in a climate crisis. The framework holds a lot of activity. The framework holds a lot of ways of thinking about what should be done in ways that may well be circular, but do not necessarily connect well to people who are more activist or more environmentalist in their basic attitude. And this compares to, and from conversations, this compares to the warmth of activism and protest, the warmth of doing and the warmth of protest, both in the sense of the idea of doing the protest against what is going on, and also the warmth of protest in terms of violence. Without these things, without a sense of the emotion, the visceral, there's a disconnect in the way in which the toolkit can be offered. Meanwhile, there's also a way of reading the toolkit and a way particularly of thinking about the tools, which is about looking for efficient delivery, more from the professional designer end of things, more from the sense of needing tools which enable projects to be managed and delivered on budget and on time. And this goes to the bias which you find in quite a lot of the design industry when facing toolkits and when facing ways of working, that they look to be cutting out the tools that they need in the time and in the context that they are. So it's a way of harvesting tools that may be effective for this purpose, for this client, for this moment, for this project. And that's not helpful, because what it enables is the losing of ethics and principles to enable speed of delivery. If one's talking about a toolkit for climate crisis design, then this cutting away, this harvesting of tools is not something that should be enabled, because it enables the biases of the past, designing in ways which are not sustainable, which are not thoughtful of the consequences of what is made. And this is the problem of the possibility of offering good tools, which are then used by people who are, bad is too strong a word, caught up in other things which mean that they have to use things urgently, even though their urgency for delivery has long-term consequences. Bad people with consequences that design creates things which have problems. So what is needed? What I see in all of this material, from the frameworking, all of these roles and tools and so forth, is that there's something missing. What I would say is missing is ritual, because ritual is a way of holding meanings and ethics as you move between all of these different elements of the framework, the tools, the toolkit, the roles. Because what the rituals can do is keep the tools firmly rooted in ethics. It can enable the regenerating of ecosystems of shared hope and principles. What I need to look at now is ritual design. Here is a diagram of what ritual entails. But what I think is interesting is we use ritual to make sure that we meet and make things at the start, so that we're present together in the future of a project. That we talk and record the roles that we have and the phrases that we will use, so that we can share power and privilege later through the project. And of course, rituals are also a way of anticipating how to be mindful and compassionate together, both for ourselves and for each other. So I think using rituals in the Design for Planet framework enables more change, better change, during the climate crisis. I will be doing more workshops in May, possibly in London, but if you're interested in a workshop anywhere, online, anywhere in the world, do contact me. I'm open for a discussion about it. Anyway, thank you.